What's up, people? I'm gonna get straight to the point. As a lot of you know that have watched my videos in the past, my name is Mondo. I'm from Longo, East Side, a neighborhood in the city of Long Beach, the East Side. And I've been hearing a lot about the Asian gang war between the Chicanos from my neighborhood, East Side Longo, and the Tiny Rascal Gang, the TRGs. Well, just so all of you know, to set the record straight, that is not a racial gang war. That all has to do with prison politics, the California Department of Corrections, uh, the streets, anything that has to do with gang politics, pretty much, who wants to run the prisons, who wants to run the streets, etc., etc. That's what it all boils down to. As you know, in prison, everybody has their own little cars. The Chicanos, like me from Southern California, I was part of the Sureño car. And then you have the Norteños, which are the northern Mexicans from up north, Northern Cali. They have their own car. The whites, they have their own car. The Woodpile, the Comrades, they have their own car. The blacks, the Crips, the Bloods, they have their own car. So basically, prison is once you get there, you run with whatever car that you belong to. For example, once again, me, I came from Southern Cal, so I had to mingle with the fellas from the Sud. That was the area that I, fell out of when I got arrested. So that's the car that I had to run with when I got to prison. And the streets is basically the same thing. Whatever area you're from, let's say you're from the east side of Long Beach, you're basically going to get into East Side Longo if you're a Chicano, or you're going to get into one of the hoods that has to be, located on the east side of Long Beach, whether it be Barrio Pobre or whatever neighborhood, BST, Barrio Small Town, or my Barrio, Longo. I happen to be from East Side Longo, from a clique called Chicos Malos, Bad Boys in English. Anyway, in the 1980s, once again to set the record straight, actually the late 70s, 79, 80, the Cambodians started coming over from Cambodia, from the country Cambodia, because they had just, had a war there, the Vietnam War, and, they were coming from a war-torn country, relocating to a new city, which happened to be Long Beach, California, which is known as Little Cambodia these days. All up and down Anaheim Street, the east side of Anaheim Street, most of the jewelry stores and liquor stores, little markets, are Cambodian owned. Back in the day when I was growing up in the early 70s, middle 70s, all that used to be white, black, or Hispanic. There was no Cambodian owned stores. Now you go down there and you see all kinds of writing, Cambodian liquor stores, and seeing the writing of Cambodia. I can't read that language because, I don't speak Cambodian, and neither can anybody that doesn't speak Cambodian. So all that was new to us, boys from the hood that were originally from that area. All that was new to us. We didn't know how to speak the language. So already there was a conflict in communication. Once there's no communication, then you can't see eye to eye with whatever group it is, because you have to have an open channel of communication in order to communicate with that race, with those people. And without that, there's nothing. Without communication, once again. So we had no communication with these cats. All we knew is that they were buying up all of our stores, all of our houses. They were getting grants from the government to buy cars, to buy homes, once again, business grants. So they were coming up, they were having things. And us being that, from that place called Long Beach, California, born and raised, most of us. I was born in East Los Angeles, but raised in the city of Long Beach. Well, back and forth to LA. My dad lived in LA, Pico de Magnolia. I guess they call that the, it's not Rampart, that's a little ways down. That's the Pico Union area. That's where my dad was, residing at the time. We lived in East LA when I was born, but then my dad moved to the west side. It's right on the border of the west side in downtown LA, east side on the border, and of the east side and the west side of LA. It was more on the west side though, because he lived on from Vermont in Pico, Magnolia, that area right there, which is crazy. Riders, 18th Street, Playboys, all those hoods are right there. A little ways down is Glanton, 14. So, I was already, in cahoots with the Vatos from 18 because we grew up right there. My sister was from 18th Street. They called her La Goofy. And she was from the Varrio 18th Street, so I knew a lot of them cats. So by the time when we relocated to Long Beach, I was 11 years old. I got jumped in the following year. Actually, I was still 11 years old when I got jumped into Eastside Longo back in the 70s. So let's see, 1976, somewhere around there is when I got jumped in. Back then, once again, there was no Cambodians. There was a few Samoans. A neighborhood called Sons of Samoa came out a little bit later after I got jumped in a couple years later. So yeah, they were around, and we got along really good with the Samoans. I grew up with Joe Fob and all them, rest in peace. I don't like throwing names around once again because if you're not here to defend yourself, I won't mention your name. You have to be present for me to mention your name unless you're already deceased, like Joe Fob is, rest in peace, from the original Sons of Samoa founder. We all used to call him Uncle Joe. I grew up with all of his nephews, the Tulepa brothers, Casper, Wizard, rest in peace. Casper's on death row, has been there for the last 30-something years. The other brother, Roscoe, Rocky, Big Man. I grew up with all of them. Big Joker from SOS. I remember when they started, they were on the corner of California and 10th Street when Sons of Samoa started. And like I said, we were allied with them. We used to do everything together. Got to the point to where Casper, from one of the Tulepa brothers from SOS, Paul Tulepa, he got jumped out of SOS and jumped into Eastside Longo. I'm the one that helped jump him in to our clique, Chicos Malos. And I gave him the name Loco, crazy, because he was a nut. That boy was a fool. He's the one that's on death row, San Quentin death row. He's been there for 30-something years already, 20-something, almost 30 years. Anyway, I grew up with all of them. Wizard, Roscoe, the other brother also got jumped out of SOS, Eastside Sons of Samoa, and he got jumped into Eastside Longo as well, Roscoe. So that way you guys get an idea as to how close we were with the Samoans at the time. And after years of us being allies and running together, we did everything together. I always ran around with Paul, which used to be Casper from SOS, now Loco from Eastside Longo. That was my road dog. We did everything together. We jacked together. We hung out. We picked up on the chicks together. We, took the girls out and party with them. And, we got high together. We did everything together, basically. So everything was good with the Samoans, right? Until a Mexican ended up killing Wizard from SOS, rest in peace. I also grew up with him. He was one of the Tulepa brothers. And then the shit just hit the fan after that. And we just, our neighborhoods went to war with each other. And in that time frame, the Cambodians were already starting to come over. See, so once they started buying up everything once again, we were like, man, what's up with these fools? They're buying up all of our properties and this and that. Once again, it's not a racial war. It all has to do with gang politics. That's why it jumped out between us and the Cambodians, because, they didn't have a gang yet. They were going to our schools. We saw them riding those brand new bikes because they had money. Once again, they were getting all these grants by the government, loans and all that to open businesses. So they were all driving brand new Schwinn's. We were driving old beat up Huffies. So we started taking their bikes, and next thing you know, they got tired of it. Long story short, they ended up becoming a little clique called the Tiny Rascal Gang. And they started fighting back. So we started going to war with these cats. I'm not gonna lie, I was at the time pretty much running the neighborhood. The homies from Longo know what's up. The OGs, the homie Clover and all them, Menace, Boxer and all them, they know what's up. They know I was running the show. And a lot of them were right there with me. They were like my right-hand man when I was running the show, throwing the meetings and what have you. So I was really into that gang war between us and the TRGs. And once again, it was already tension with the Samoans as well. We were already fighting with them. And it was a really crazy war. I'm telling you, we had homeboys that would be waiting at the stoplight, and the Cambodian TRGs would run up on them and light them up, with the Uzi or whatever, just kill them right there while they were waiting for the light to change, in order to proceed driving down Anaheim Street, where they would run up on them once again at a stoplight and just light them up, and take them out. They were kicking doors in, running up, killing entire families. And we were doing the same thing to them. It was going back and forth. I mean, it was like that bad. Like every other night, there was a shooting and killings every week. Within those few years that the war started back in 1987, I believe it was 88. And it was to the point where we were kidnapping them, putting them in the back seat the trunk of the cars and driving them to different spots where we kick it, like Varrio, 15th Street, 14th Street. The dudes might click 10th Street, Chico's Models. We would drive them up. Well, not me, but once again, I'm not going to mention any names. I'm not trying to incriminate anybody or whatever, but I never told on nobody and never have, never will. That's just one thing I take pride in, even though I don't push that line anymore. Can't nobody ever say I gave up at the drawing. That's one thing about me that I take pride in. I walked away from that life in my late 50s now, and I'm still here for a reason. God had a plan for me, and that's to share these stories with you kids so you can see how crazy this way of life is, the mi vida loca way of life is, gangster life. Anyhow, so we would drive around, and the homies would have TRG in the trunk, and they would open the trunk, and the homies would take turns, stabbing them or shooting them or whatever the case may be in the back of a stolen car, G-Ride. And then they would hang them upside down from a rope and use them as a punching bag in a garage. That's the kind of shit that was happening between us and the TRGs. That crazy. I mean, it was that intense. Once again, they were running up on us, kicking doors in, lighting up the whole families and what have you. The other day on the internet, I saw some dude saying that the Longueros ran to whoever, the big homies, and asked them for help. That's not the truth. That's a false statement. I'm going to set that story straight right now. The reason that they got themselves in hot water is because Ted Koppel, he was with 48 Hours, 60 Minutes, those programs that interview different, people, different organizations that have to do with businesses or what have you. 48 Hours, you guys are hip to that. 60 Minutes. Well, they 2020, whatever those shows were, investigative shows. They did a special on the gang war between the Latinos and the Asians back in the 90s. And they went to the LA County Jail. None of the Chicanos, none of us would talk on camera about that war, but one of them did. And I'm not going to say his name either, but the TRGs know who I'm talking about. The OGs anyway, not the youngsters, because this is way back before their time. They went to the LA County Jail, and the cameraman started from his Nike Cortez. They went up, and his bottom blue jumpsuit said LA County Jail, going down the pants like that. And then they went up to his top, to his two-piece top where it said LA County Jail over the pocket. And then up to his face, which at the time he was wearing a hairnet, and his hair was slicked back, just like the Cholo. And Ted Koppel from 48 Hours asked him, what are you in jail for? And he said, murder. And he said, what gang are you from? And he said, TRG, Long Beach, Tiny Rascal Gang. And he said, who did you kill? And the dude said, a Mexican, I'm a Mexican killer. When you make that kind of statement, people that are Southsiders, Sureños, that are in prison, they have TVs in their cells. They're watching this at Chino Prison or wherever, they're watching Soledad Prison. They're watching this in their cells on TV, and they're seeing this Cambodian gang member from TRG saying that he's a Mexican killer. So they took that to heart, and that's why they got themselves in trouble. It's not because we went running to anybody for help. That's not the case. That's a false statement once again. We didn't run to anybody for help. We were handling our business just like they were. It was back and forth, back and forth. It was like this block is TRG's, this block over here is Eastside-Longo, and from this corner to that corner, we're shooting it out every night. You could hear the homies coming to my house at the time when I was pushing that line. They would go up in the attic, take the guns down from the attic, load them up, load the clips up. One of them would come up to the pad in a G-Ride. The homies would get in 4 deep, and they would go to the different spots. Over here was SOS. You'd hear it, boom, boom, boom. Then you'd hear the other block, the brake slam, and you'd hear boom, boom, boom. They're hitting the TRGs. We'd drive to the next block over, where the Asian boys kick it. You'd hear we could hear this while in my house, me and my daughter's mom, and then they would hit the suicidals, boom, 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 till their clips were empty. They would roll up to the pad, and not run, roll up to the pad, and the G-Ride like nothing happened. Just walk normally into my pad, put the guns back up in the attic, and just chill like nothing happened. Not even talk about it. We would read about it the next day in the paper. They were doing the same thing to us, the TRGs. They were rolling up on bikes, one on the handlebars and one driving the bike with a Uzi and light us up. That's how bad it was, back and forth. On bikes, on the bus, we had one homeboy that would go to a bus stop, catch the bus with his 9mm, go to different spots where the enemies hung out, the Asian boys, the TRGs. He would light them up, come back to that same bus stop, and put the newspaper article on the bus bench so the homies could read what he did the following day. That's the kind of shit that was happening between the two neighborhoods. The TRGs killed a lot of us, we killed a lot of them. Also, cemetery in Long Beach, one side is all Cambodian TRGs that died in that war, and one side is all Chicanos from Eastside-Longo that died in that war as well. And to this day, it's still going on. There's just too many murders between the two neighborhoods for us to ever get along. While I was in the LA County Jail, this is how bad it was, kids, that I would walk around before I got slammed in a high-power module for a stabbing. Before that happened, I was general population. I could go to visiting room walking without handcuffs on, without an escort, a deputy escorting me. That was before my high-power module days, where I was chained to a waist chain, leg irons, and they would walk me to the visiting room, put me in a cage. I would visit with my family through the phone. They would pull me out of the little cage, little stand-up cage with a little stool. They'd pull me out of there, shackle me back up, leg irons, and walk me back to the high-power module. Before all that, I was general population. Once again, roaming around freely. With a razor blade in my mouth, I would go to visiting, and me and Weddle from Eastside Weemaz would come out. He would get visits at the same time our families would come together. Then we would roam the hallways. Any Cambodians that we saw, we would take them in the stairwell. With all due respect, you know what's going on between us. You guys, the Cambodian TRGs have a light on them. So I need you to take off your shirt and see if you have any tattoos that are TRG or whatever other neighborhood was in hot water. Because it was a Chicano neighborhoods too that were in trouble. So whoever had light on them, I was cutting them. So they would take off their shirt if they had TRG tatted on them. Me and Weddle both would cut them, and we would just go on our way like nothing. Like those kids were doing when they come to my house and get the guns and go and handle their business and walk back to the pad like nothing. Me and him were the same way. We'd walk around the hallways, get another one. Hey, come in the stairwell. We take them up in there. People know what I'm talking about, the stairwell where the escalators go to the different floors, cell block floors, second floor, third floor. We take them up in the escalator stairwell, take off their shirt. If they didn't have TRG on them, they could go on their merry way. We wouldn't mess with them. As soon as they had TRG on them, they were getting cut. That's how bad the war was between us and them. Once again, a lot of people died. It's sad because, in the long run, we're all God's people. That's the way I see it nowadays. I have friends that are Cambodian, Vietnamese, nowadays Filipino. I live in a home with Filipinos. The house that we rent, me and my mom, it's Filipino owned. Just to show you, we've always gotten along with the Filipinos. They have the same bloodline as a lot of us Hispanics, which is from Spain, Spaniard bloodline, because the Philippines, the Spaniards ran that country for 300 years, just like they did, Mexico and other parts of Latin America. The Spanish ran all of those countries. So we have pretty much the same bloodline, the same customs as the Filipinos. But anyway, nowadays, I teach boxing. When I can, my mom has pancreatic cancer right now. She's dying here in the home. They let her come home on hospice from Valley Hospital. So I'm taking care of her now. She's on her last legs right now. She's starting to bleed from the nose. The pancreatic cancer is taking her from us, and it's hard on me because I'm watching my mom take her last breath. But I've been watching all this on the internet and all this about the Longueros ran to whoever the big guys for help. That's not true. We are the biggest gang in Long Beach. Not to brag because I'm from Longo. As you can see right here, I got Longo on my stomach, and this neighborhood is old. It's been around since the 60s, and we are once again the biggest gang in Long Beach, one of the biggest gangs in LA County. That's how big we are, because we have East Side Longo, West Side Longo, North Side Longo, over by Compton, the projects, Carmelitas, and we are a big neighborhood. We're very deep. And we don't need to run to anybody for help because that's how big we are and powerful. Power comes in numbers, and we have the numbers. We don't need to run to anybody for help. The reason they got themselves in hot water was with that statement that dude made, and he got killed later on when he went upstate because he ended up getting life for killing one of my homies. Raza that saw that on TV where he said he was a Mexican killer, they were waiting for him. As soon as he got upstate, they whacked him. So, your mouth can be your worst enemy. That's why I choose my words correctly. I don't throw anybody's name around and get anybody in hot water with the law or any of that. Even though those days are over with for me, the gang life, the gang banging, la vida loca, mi vida loca, way of life is over with for me. I still, to this day, will never front anybody off or incriminate anybody. It's just never been me, never has been, never will be. So, after seeing all this on the internet, where the TRGs are saying that we ran to the big guys for help, once again, that's a false statement. We don't need to do that. There's enough of us to handle our own. We've always handled our own. We always will. It's just the way it is, Once again, in LA County, we are one of the biggest gangs in all of LA County. That's how big my neighborhood is. Once again, not to brag, there's a lot of us. We're very deep, and we have a lot of different cliques. And in the long run, we're all one. We're all East Side Longo, and we ride together as one. Shout out to all the Cambodians that are in Long Beach. I grew up with a lot of you. I became really good friends with a lot of you. Once again, none of this is racial. It's all gang related. Even the war we have with the Insane Crips and the Rolling 20 Crips, all that has nothing to do with race. We are not a racist gang like people say we are. The Longueros are racist. No. Once again, it's all over gang politics. The wars that are going on, that have been going on and that are going on to this day, have to do with gang politics once again. So just thought I would set the record straight with you guys, and hopefully you kids will see that this way of life, my old way of life I should say, ain't for the faint of heart. It's nothing nice. Only two things that you'll get out of that lifestyle, mi vida loca lifestyle, my crazy life, in English, is death or life imprisonment. One of the two. There ain't no other way about it. That's just the way it is, and there's only two things you got to look forward to in that way of life. So if you're not involved in that way of life, kids, I think you should think twice about ever joining a gang, because not just Longo, but all the gangs in LA County, actually all over the world, nowadays are playing for keeps. Most of the kids are packing guns. They don't fight. They don't fight from the shoulder no more like we used to. They pull out a gun and kill you. That's just the way it is. Or pull out a knife and stab you and kill you. That's just the way the gang life is these days. So I just wanted to set the record straight once again, people. And you guys take care and God bless you all. Huh?